X-Max needs no introduction. Whoa. X-Mini may do. Let me tell you all about it. Well, this is the box, and it ain't a big box. This is what's in the box. Not much, right? But it's pretty cool. This is the MJX something something. This is the MJX Hyper Go 20208. Little 120 scale monster truck, complete with wheelie bar, lights, oil-filled shocks, and a bunch more. Honestly, it's actually pretty good. Now, one of the things with MJX's radios is they've always felt a little bit on the cheap side. And I've always found the little triggers to be kind of ick and the wheels to be kind of yuck. But this one's different, and perhaps moving forward, MJX radios will actually be better. This now has a much more solid feel to the trigger. You hear that? It feels like a nice radio. And the wheel, you hear that? Oh, it's got, and I've said this in a few recent videos, it's got inertia, which feels really nice. I always make a bit of a deal about the radios, in this case 2 AA's, by the way, because this is your connection to the car. When you're driving a real car or riding a bike, you're kind of part of the machine, you're in there. So the ergonomics matter and the interior matters, or on a bike, how it feels, how your knees can be around the tank when you're cornering, whatever. How you feel in the cockpit or on a bike, it's part of the machine. With radio control, I mean, it's in the name, isn't it? It's radio control. You're separate, or remote control. You're remotely separate from the machine. So I would argue that this little thing here matters quite a bit. The fact that it feels nice, and the wheel feels good with a surprisingly large throw on it, actually, and that inertia I could do all day long. For those of you who actually care about this stuff, I'm telling you, this is a good start to any car. It doesn't matter what the car is. If the radio is nice, I'm there for it. If you happen to be watching anyone from Element RC, this is one shortcoming, and associated too. Your radios need work. They feel clunky. It's the first thing that jumps out at me for any car, honestly. But for MJX, yeah, this so much nicer than the old MJX stuff. Now, this is a little car. The battery is charging right now, but it's an 850 milliamp hour 2S, and it's charging with the 1.3 amp USB charger it came with, so it's little. Look at this. Now, you tell me what other little cars like this can just bounce like that. If we did it in slow motion, which I can't with this camera, you would see this. That's it. Now, if there wasn't oil in the shocks, you'd see this in slow motion. Or the fact that it can just land like that and absorb the shocks means these shocks work. That's a really good thing. Now, just like the X-Max, check this out. One little switch, lift, pull. Done. Is that not amazing? Check out the interior of that thing. And in fact, I'll show you a photo. So your battery sits on top. And when you slide it off using this dodgy lock mechanism, which I think we're going to see the battery flying out sometimes when we drive it, there's actually an outrunner motor in here. Now I've got a manual. It came with a manual, exploded parts and whatnot. This page shows you a couple of interesting things. We've got metal gears in the diff, metal drive shaft up the middle of it, ball bearings throughout. We've got aluminium shock bodies as well, which is really nice, and that they're oil sealed with the appropriate number of O-rings in them. And then we've got this outrunner motor. Now, an outrunner is interesting because we see outrunners on crawlers typically. Let me see if I can pull one up and show you. All right, so in a crawler, we've got outrunners because they give you a really short motor, which means you can fit them in all sorts of interesting places. You've got a surprising amount of torque for the size of the motor. They're not as torquey as a long can, but outrunners just deliver a beautiful amount of torque. And they tend to be fairly efficient too. So an outrunner is where the actual motor the external part of it spins, and the rotor itself is attached to that external bit, and then the stator stays still, and then the actual exterior spins. There are just magnets on that. So the powered part of it is internal, and it's the external thing that stays straight. Now in a traditional motor, the whole rotating assembly, they don't move. On an outrunner, you've actually got a fair bit of moving mass further out, and the center is still. So it's a torquey way to solve the motive problem in an RC car. This is particularly interesting for a little tiny car like this, size of my hand, you know, like it's a little car, right? It's interesting for a car like this because, one, it keeps the weight down. And when you consider some of the other smallish stuff, like this XDKJ005 from Lalo, which I've actually modified to have a 3650 big brushless motor in it, these get quite heavy. And with mass comes all manner of problems. You can still beef up the suspension and have it handle beautifully, and it'll go fast. And that's what a lot of these channels are looking at these days, because you can find fast cars everywhere, right? But when they're heavy, it makes them less agile. It means there's a lot more inertia that they're carrying, so changing direction and stopping and crashing are painful. So I'm therefore excited because this little thing is all plastic. It weighs nothing. It's so light. Yes, the battery has some mass to it. Let me see, we're still charging? Yeah. Just gonna unplug that charger which it comes with for a sec. So the battery just slides on like so, and to get it off, you just press this little tab down and she slides off, right? So it's in. I don't think it's gonna stay on. Oh, okay, so it doesn't stay on. But then that was me holding it like a big angry giant. Right, let's see what it weighs. We'll stick this little body on too, why not? 550 grams, give or take. Not that accurate for something this small. And the nice thing about weighing very little is direction changes are inexpensive on the car. Crashes are inexpensive on the car, and it's just gonna take a bunch of abuse and be just fine. I can't do that with most cars, I just can't. The Outrunner is important, to come back to the motor, because it doesn't weigh much either, and it doesn't have a lot of rotational mass, so there's not a lot of inertia to overcome from some long center part of the motor. So we're going to find, probably with a motor like this and its gearing, it's probably not going to have the most super snappy instantaneous acceleration, but it's going to be more than ample for this kind of car. It's actually going to feel like a brushed system with a little bit extra. So not as crazy as the little long cans that you can get in a lot of cars these days, but that is perfect for this. We don't need it to be a high-speed machine. We need it to be able to wheelie, we need it to be able to change directions, we need it to be able to flip and cartwheel and stuff like that without braking. That's what we want. This is a cheap, fun machine, and I expect that a skate park is, like, this is going to be one of the very few cars where you can take it to a skate park as it is out of the box, not do a lick of maintenance on it, and for a long time, unless you're very unlucky, like landing very hard like that, and even then, I think it's going to serve you well for a while. Very briefly on the radio, you've got a front headlight on and off for the headlight there. Okay. So as well as the headlight, we also have the standard stuff. We've got steering and throttle dual rate, so you can max out how much you can limit the throttle, you can limit the steering throw, and trim, which is to center the throttle and also to center your steering. It's a full metal drivetrain. Ball bearings in all corners and all throughout the drivetrain. Metal throughout the drivetrain. Oil is in the shocks. I mean, it's pretty great. Dog bones are on the inside on both, and CVDs on the outside, and with a diff, metal diff as well. So the rear diff even has oil in it. There's a bit of inertia there. And the front is quite open. I think this thing's actually going to be a hoot to drive. I really do. I wouldn't mind seeing the front being a bit more stiff actually, because the back is really stiff. But then I wonder, have they tested it? Doesn't matter, we're going to test it. There's no rear light, just a headlight. And I think that's really all we need to say about that. Little Dean's connector in the side. There we go. Now we've got a power button here on the side. We're just going to put the body back on. Easy as that. Make sure the wires are tucked in up out of the way. Sure, they're good. All right, so that's your car. Right, we're going to turn the car on first. Usually you don't have to do this, but car on. And then radio on. All right, we're good. Light, there's an LED button. Simple as that. We've got steering trim. And if you're wondering what throttle trim does, I'll tell you now. You're basically just setting the endpoint for it. And now here's what dual rate does for you. I'm going to turn it down a fair way. Maximum speed. Now we turn dual rate all the way up. Maximum speed. All right. So it's your limits from 0 all the way up. That's what everything is. Now it's pretty straightforward. I think we should get this thing out for a drive, but we're going to use my backyard. Let's take it for a spin. So it's got enough punch to wheelie off the bat, but it does still kind of ramp up. Steering's not super sharp, but that's okay. Oh, this thing's made for stunts though. All right, let's get it down where we can get a bit more speed. Actually, let's try speed. How stable is it driving? Because there's no gyro in this thing. Oh, it's all right in long grass too. All right, higher traction surfaces will be better. All right, come on. Nice. What's it like in the yard? Dear. Come on, little car. Oh. All right, Lana, turn it over. Come on, turn it over. Turn it over, dog. Turn it over. Turn it over. So I'm finding to steer with this thing, you've really got to slow down. And it cartwheels like you'd expect. And being so short, I'm finding it difficult to keep it on the ground. I actually have a feeling that this thing's made for concrete. It's very lightweight. And so far it hasn't been overly satisfying to drive. Turn it over, dog. Down on the track, we're probably going to have a bit better luck with it. I'm finding the thing cannot steer. It just cannot steer if you're accelerating. I actually think this is made for urban environments. It's not particularly satisfying to drive on this dirt. It's all right, but because it's so short, it just cartwheels everywhere. I'm not getting anywhere near the speed it's capable of. We're not getting anywhere near the speed it's capable of because it is just not able to stay straight. The good news is it's fairly well planted for what it is, but steering, you really need to be decelerating or just flat out off the throttle. I'm finding direction changes are nearly impossible when I'm accelerating because that front just picks up so easily. I think they made a good decision with the Outrunner motor because it's as torquey as it needs to be. You don't need some long can just wolfing out power because it's already overpowered. It's hard not to be when you're this short and this small. Because physics doesn't change whether it's this or an X-Max. You know, atoms are still the same size, gravity's still the same. So relative to all that, this guy is just a little tiny insect compared to some of the big trucks. Get this onto the cement though, concrete, and I think it might be a different story. Why don't we see what we can see? On a high traction surface, that's better. Yeah, okay, so I haven't got a skate park to show you, but this car is really stable on concrete. So out of all the cars that you would take to a skate park, this is the one. I really think it is, because it's now able to turn even when you're going fast. It doesn't have that traction on dirt. This is a sealed road car. This is a pavement car. Perfect. All right, we've seen enough. It'll be stable. I'm not going to do a speed test, but suffice to say, this is a decent car for sealed road. Now, I'm pretty happy with this car, but one thing I haven't been able to work out is it waterproof? Now, I bought this car and paid for it with my own money. This wasn't sent to me by anybody. Is it waterproof? Well, we're about to find out. So long, little car. I see nothing about it being waterproof. So this is, well, this will be a shame if I'm wrong because I like this car. Here we go. Now, batteries can get wet, we know this. So far, we're still steering. We still have a motor. Now I've still got power, and do we have light still? Yes, we do. But I have lost power to the motor. I also did just fill it up though. I'll just turn it off. All right, we'll turn it on again. Turn the radio on. All right, she's on, but no motor. So I think we can say not waterproof. Now, as far as electronics go, modern electronics, this thing will actually survive this most likely. If I keep the power disconnected and let it completely dry out, it'll probably work again. All right, I just pulled it apart a little bit and blew into it a few times. And she's back. Well, there you have it. MJX 20208, little brother to the MJX 10208, the 110 scale. This is the 120 scale. This is a frustrating car to drive off-road. It doesn't steer well, it tumbles heaps. I have trouble keeping the front down. Even driving with little throttle, it's a difficult car to drive off-road. Get it onto a sealed surface though and everything changes. If you are in an urban environment, this is a great little car to just go and use there. Don't take it to any kind of dirt and expect it to be good. I think it's going to be okay, but this short wheelbase and the high height of it, like the high center of gravity and the short wheelbase together mean that it's not going to handle off-road and bumps particularly well. Skate parks, sealed surfaces, local street and gutters, absolutely. Make some jumps, have fun. It stays the course when it can grip. And I think that's actually pivotal for this car. Not waterproof, I just put water all through it. And although I dried it out, blowing it and shaking it, and it worked again, I suspect if the servo isn't waterproof, it's probably going to die soon. And because there are ball bearings all the way through and they're shielded and not sealed, that's a consideration too. So don't get it wet. I've seen nothing saying it's waterproof, and what I've just done then tells me probably not. If I take it apart and put conformal coating on the PC board, that might change. The Outrunner's probably fine getting wet. It's really the bearings and the servo that are much harder to account for. This video is brought to you by my channel members. Here they are. This is the Scratch Build guys, the top of 3 tiers. Thank you so much for your support, guys, and to everyone else who throws me a few bob each month. Thank you, thank you. I really appreciate that. Throw me a like if you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to see more about these smaller cars, I guess. And I will catch you next time on RC-TNT. And PS, Happy New Year. I hope it's a good one for you. Cheers.